planner at MAPC. Also here with me is Travis Pollock, who's a senior transportation planner at MAPC, Sharon Ron, who works in our public health department, Josh Eichen, who works in our economic development department, and Margie Weinberger, who is our general counsel. So welcome to this webinar. We're excited to talk to you all about our new grant opportunity, which is the Taxi, Livery, and Hackney Transportation Partnerships Grant. We've already received a number of questions from all of you, so we're hoping to cover most, if not all, of our questions that you may have today. If we do not cover all of your questions today, we are going to be, please email us. We're going to be posting an FAQ document on our website on Friday. So if you can get questions to us that are not answered today and are not answered by our documents that we currently have on our website, please email us by Thursday, and we will put those questions in the FAQ document that we will post to our website on Friday. So we're going to share a screen here.
Mara, I think I'm sharing my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, you are. Great, so we wanted to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, you can turn off your microphone and camera or leave the meeting. A copy of this recording will be available on our website probably later this week. Please put any questions you have in the chat. If you're not able to access the chat or you would like to ask a question verbally, we'll have an opportunity to unmute participants during the Q&A session, which will happen a little bit later. So our agenda for today, we just did some welcome and introductions. We are going to do an overview of the grant opportunity and talk about the timeline for the grant opportunity. We're going to go over the application really briefly, the scoring criteria, talk about some lessons learned from our first round of grants that happened in the spring, and then jump into some questions. So for a little bit of background, some of you may know that we had a grant opportunity to support the taxi industry and public entities in the spring. This was a direct support in relation to COVID-19. So we took some of the money from this grant opportunity to support transportation and delivery needs for folks because of the pandemic. So for this grant opportunity, we awarded about a little over $1 million to 25 grantees throughout the state to partner with taxi, livery, and Hackney companies. This urgent program, as you may hear us refer to it as, was restrictive in the types of trips and the population served because we wanted to make sure that this amount of money was specific to serve COVID-19 needs that needed to be addressed for populations and trips that needed to happen for COVID-19 purposes. So now we'll talk about the Taxi, Livery, and Hackney Transportation Partnerships grant opportunity that is currently available and that will be due on November 20th. So the purpose of this program is to support the taxi, livery, and Hackney industry to partner with public agencies as well as nonprofits to support transportation, non-emergency medical transportation initiatives, as well as deliveries. We're awarding funds to individuals throughout, or organizations throughout the state. They will not exceed $250,000. 95% of the funds must be passed through to the taxi, livery, or Hackney businesses. Grant awardees may be allowed up to 5% of the grant request for administrative expenses to oversee or administer the grant. As I mentioned previously, eligible entities for this particular grant program, we've expanded slightly based on some feedback from the taxi industry. So for this grant opportunity, state, local agencies will be eligible, as well as regional transit authorities, health and human service providers, and nonprofits, as long as their mission aligns with MAPC's mission. You must partner with a taxi, livery, or hackney business that are currently registered to do business in the state of Massachusetts and not debarred. Some of the types of trips and populations served. This particular grant program, we are not prescriptive about the specific populations you need to work with or the types of trips that can be used with this grant funding. However, recognizing that COVID-19 is still a very significant problem in the community, we want to make sure that we prioritize some vulnerable populations and trips that can help address COVID-19. And as I mentioned previously, applications are due November 20th at 5 p.m. So that's a week from this Friday. So a little bit of background, the source of funds for this grant program, this fund was established by state law in 2016. These funds come from a 20-cent fee on every ride from transportation network companies such as Uber and Lyft. And 5% of that goes to the municipality, 5% goes to MassDevelopment for this fund, and then 10% goes to the MBTA. Funds have been collected from 2017, 2018, and 2019 so far, and we are unsure about what the funds will be for 2020. The timeline for this grant opportunity. So the grant opportunity was announced by MAPC on October 26th. Today, November 9th, we're having our applicant FAQ session. On Thursday is the last day to submit questions to us about the grant opportunity. Friday, November 13th, we will post our FAQ document to MAPC's website for everyone to look at. And then November 20th, which is a week from this Friday, is the deadline to submit applications. And we are expecting to announce awards sometime in December. So I'll hand it over to Travis now to talk a little bit more about the application and scoring criteria.
Thanks, Mara. Can I get a thumbs up if people can hear me? Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to go over quickly a couple things on the grant application. So if you log on to the website, you should be able to download the grant application, which is a fillable PDF. If you're familiar with the urgent program that was done in the spring, it'll look familiar, but I want to point out there are some differences. And so if you applied for the urgent program and or you didn't, I ask that you please read carefully the notice and the instructions and the grant application to make sure that you're filling it out correctly. So, so the first one, as Mara mentioned, is just the step one, which is the eligible entities, and really, so that's the state or local agencies, transit authorities, regional transit authorities, health and human service providers, and nonprofits that are registered a 501c3 organization and whose mission aligns with MAPC. I will say that the rest of this, like steps 2 through 5, are really just the other information that you would enter. Step 6 is the partnerships, and I want to point out again, it's as much as possible, you should click the information or check the information as to whether the business, whether you know the business is currently registered to do business in Massachusetts and is not debarred, as well as some other things. I will say the reason why we do this is because the way the state law is set is that state funds can only go to businesses that are currently registered to do business in Massachusetts, and they're not debarred from receiving state funds. So that's why we ask those questions, and that's why we're have to look that up. The rest of the steps are really 7 through 13 are just the pieces that you will need to do to describe what your program is, why it's needed, and how you will operate and administer your program. So there's the program description, and then which also includes like anything you may have done or as to like what the needs are, the safety measures, coordination with transit. We want to make sure that you're coordinated as much as possible with existing transit services, how you're going to do the trip request and dispatches, the proposed budget, and then your timeline and reporting. So I'm going to go over now the scoring criteria. And this is something that was just posted today as addendum number 1. So I'll go over this a little briefly, but I recommend request that you go to the legal notices website and download this because this is new. So the scoring criteria that you see here, this is what the evaluation committee will use to evaluate the grant applications. And you can download the entire form and see not only the scoring criteria, but also the guidelines for scoring these. So we have 9 criteria that we will be using. They're listed here. As you can see, we're asking to see if we're checked to see if the applicant is using a Massachusetts Supplier Diversified Certified Enterprise or equivalent, which is, we have a link to that in the application. We're looking for to expand the number of businesses that are certified as Supplier Diversity Certified. We're also looking for to see your overall description about the needs and the populations that you would serve and how you will meet those needs, how this grant will meet those needs. We're also going to be reviewing the ADA transportation services. How are you looking to ensure that that you're accommodating people with disabilities. Your safety measures in terms of how they meet or exceed the CDC transportation safety guidelines, there's a link there to those CDC guidelines. Your coordinated transit services, how you will be doing the customer trip requests and dispatching. And just a couple other things here in terms of how your proposed budget, including like breakdown by like the projected trip types. We understand that you may not know, or obviously you don't know the exact number of trips per week, but you want to see what your guess is or what your best guess is in terms of those numbers of trips and the cost per trip, as well as the timeline, as I mentioned, of your program and how you will meet its timing and service goals. And then the last one is how well your overall program meets the goals put forth in the grant description. Those are the goals that are listed in the grant application. There's, I believe, 7 of them are like increasing the availability of wheelchair accessible vehicles, encouraging and supporting racial equity and diversity in the taxi industry, providing service in transit isolated areas, providing first last mile connections to and from public transit, supporting the regional transit authority or other municipal or health agency transportation operations, improving non-emergency medical services, and meeting other transportation needs of cities, towns, nonprofits in your region. You can see we've weighted those. We have a weighting system. There'll be a total of 100 points that each evaluator will score, and then we'll compare the scores and see how each grant application is scored. Next, I want to go over some of the lessons we've learned from the urgent program. As Mara mentioned, we had the urgent taxi program in the spring. We received multiple applications then. There were 25 agencies and others who were awarded the grants. And from not only the grant application process that was with the urgent program, but also the the way we've seen those grants as we've monitored them and talked to people and some of the lessons we've learned. So one is new programs often start slowly. So some people, you may have something already set up and you're looking to expand, and that's fine. Oftentimes though, you're starting a new program, and it just takes a little while. So I would maybe suggest that you think about that as you think about how your program is going to start and your budget. Develop a marketing strategy to get the word out. Not everyone may know obviously about your program. You do, but get the word out. Talk with your taxi providers early about the program and set up those agreements as to how you will do this and how you're going to operate the program with them. In terms of also create a plan for collecting and managing data, we at MAPC, if for the grantees that are selected or the grant recipients, we will be requesting every couple months or every 3 months to submit data, both quantitative data in terms of what your trips are, but also qualitatively, like how things are going. Be thinking of that as well. Anticipate challenges and plan for them. So, sometimes there's a challenges in terms of like maybe how you think you might work the program or with the marketing. But I want to let you know that we are here at MAPC as a resource. We want to make sure these are successful programs. We want to make sure that these programs are there to help the taxi and livery industry and also help people who need transportation for the essential trips and other vulnerable populations that need the transportation. So we're here to, and please use us as a resource. We've gotten already some questions from everyone, and I know for the urgent program, we've often gotten questions, and we found ways to work to quickly amend an agreement or work with you or work with them on making sure that their program is set up. And I'll say that, again, check with your taxi company state registration status as well as their debarment status. Again, want to say we don't do that just because we want to make sure that you're checking boxes, but because the state law requires that any business that is going to receive state funds must be currently registered with the state to do business and is not debarred. And with that, we're running very well on time. We wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and answers or questions and responses. I will say that, as Mara mentioned, there will be an official addendum to the grant notice that will list the questions we've received, not only during this session, but ones we've received already and ones we will receive up through the 12th, and then our responses to them. So while we'll do our best to answer questions, please note that really the official responses to everything will be in that addendum that will be posted on Friday, November 13th. And so with that, I'll take a pause here and I'm going to ask Sharon if she can unmute herself and maybe ask some of the questions and some of the ones that we've received so far. Sharon, are you there?
I am.
Okay.
So I think that there was interest in having Margie explain a little bit more about the diversity certificate.
Hi, I'm happy to do that. I'm Margie Weinberger, the General Counsel at MAPC. The Supplier Diversity Program has been created by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it certifies companies that are minority-owned, disadvantaged, women-owned companies, veteran-owned companies, service-disabled veteran companies. There's a whole list of those companies that can be certified, and the nice thing about it is there's an easy website you can get onto. We have all of the links to all of the websites within the NGO and the application, so easy to use. You can just click on them. And you can find all of the businesses by searching on the type of business. So transportation would be one keyword to try. And you can find all of those companies that have been certified by the state as one that serves minority interests. So any questions about that, I'm happy to further explain it. But the nice thing is it's a very user-friendly website.
That's great, Margie. I think there's another set of questions that are related to kinds of projects funded in the past, a specific question, whether we've worked with veterans agencies in the past. Maybe you could speak a little bit about what was funded through the urgent program and how that might be a little bit different in this next round of funding and what we might be looking for.
Okay. I can take that. Sharon, it's a little hard to hear on my end, but I think what you said is like, what were the kind of trips we did with the urgent program and how they might be a little different now? Okay. So with the urgent program, as was mentioned, we set that up, as sort of like quickly with to get help address COVID and some of the things that were going on with COVID. And so the types of trips that people did for that one is under that program were, and I'll let Mara please chime in and Margie, but often it was things like food delivery, or it could be for people maybe that were isolated due to COVID, or meal deliveries, or prescription drug deliveries, pantry food delivery. We also had even food delivery that was from farmers markets, although the weather's changed, but that obviously that is still going on or will go on in the spring. So those were some of the types of trips. So it was, that's of deliveries to people. And it could have been to people that were homebound, it could for COVID or for other reasons, or for veterans, or for people who are homeless. We also had transportation for the homeless. There were times, for example, Boston did that, where they're with their program for helping people who were unhoused. getting them from one site to another, or with getting materials and food delivered from site to site within Boston. Some of the other ones were, sometimes councils on aging had their trips. They couldn't do a van service currently, or there was the maybe they were also trying to social distance, whereas maybe you would have put more people in the van. You obviously want to distance them, so you're limited in number of trips you could do with the van service. So the partnering with a taxi delivery company would allow you to expand that. And it could have been trips to the grocery store or those non-emergency medical trips, and could be shopping trips. So that's examples of some of those. We did also have sometimes essential workers. And I will point out that some decided to keep their geography a little closer in terms of maybe where they were going, but others realized that there were some, for example, medical trips where they couldn't go out typically with their van service to some further out, and they've used the taxi service to expand the geographic reach of their services. So I think those are some of the examples of what people have done. So this time we like I mentioned, we would like you to tell us what you see the need is, and you can put that in the program description when you apply. Mara or Margie, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it, but what's important to understand is that the first round of funding was limited to your urgent COVID transportation needs. This is not as limited, although we live in COVID. And what's important to remember is you need to figure out how to service your communities best, and whether it's to provide a partnership. There's a question about a local hospital, which is, if it is a nonprofit, they make a great partner. Or if you don't have to be certified as a supplier diversity partner, it's nice, but it's just one of the many things that are being reviewed and scored. And absolutely, we would consider veteran services to medical appointments, non-COVID related, to be one of those things that we would absolutely consider. But what's important is that you put something in that really reflects the urgent, the current needs of your community, and ones that can meet needs over the period of a year.
Okay, let's maybe go on to any other questions. Sharon, you want to, other questions we're seeing? Oh, Sharon, you're muted.
So there is a question about the funding, the 5% for administrative operational costs. Karen asks, are we able to contract with our own transportation to provide rides?
In terms of like your own transportation, like with your own drive. So I guess I'll assume that what you're talking about there is the, or maybe Karen, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah. Yes, I actually sent a two-part question. One, I kind of think I know the answer, and that is, regardless of how you do this, you must be registered in the state of Massachusetts. But the other part of that question has to do with that 5%, and when we contract with a registered or certified taxi or livery, how does that work? That's the basic question.
Okay, so let me see if I could try to address the 5%. So if, as was mentioned, we want 95 or no less than 95% of the funds from the Transportation Infrastructure Enhancement Fund, which was set up to assist the taxi and livery industry, to go to the taxi and livery industry. So if you are eligible to apply for up to 5% of the grant request to pay for staff time, if it's documented that their staff time is to do things like taking trip dispatching and taking trip requests and dispatching, and then maybe data collection as well. So if you can clearly document that you have this person at this rate who will be doing this work for it, and then that could be up to 5% of the request of the grant to do that.
It's important to consider whether an employee would be doing this as part of their current employment, because that would not be included in an administrative overhead. Okay. It has to be an employee's new responsibility as a result of this funding.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then I think we've gotten a couple questions previously in terms of like, can we use the funds to pay for our own drivers and operators? And that is not the case. It is for you to partner with a taxi, livery, or hackney business to provide that service. So.
And just to follow up on that, the reason for that is because of the way these funds were formed in the state legislature. There was, because the TNC companies, which are companies like Uber and Lyft, have really taken off recently, they have harmed the taxi, livery, and hackney industry. So this fee on TNC rides is to specifically support the taxi, livery, and hackney businesses. So to have, so in order to use these funds need to go to a certified business in the state of Massachusetts that is also not debarred.
Sharon, any questions?
Would VIA be considered? There was a question earlier about microtransit companies like VIA. Would it be considered as a TNC?
I'm going to defer on that one. I'm not sure. I think we need to do a little research on that.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest that they might be a great partner with a community or any municipality that's interested in this. I think that VIA would make a terrific partner as part of the program to consider. But I wouldn't necessarily say that a private entity could do this without that. This is either for public nonprofit organizations to partner with, taxi and transportation companies such as Microtransit. So we think it'd be great for you to partner up.
Travis, we had a question from Maureen about if a town partners with the hospital, can they also apply on their own? So I think the question, to more generalize it, is can one individual apply with different partners to this grant twice or more than that?
So again, I'm having a little problems hearing, but can you repeat the question? Sorry, Sharon.
Yes. Let me know if you can't hear me, but can partners apply with different collections of partners to this grant and submit multiple applications?
I hadn't thought about that one.
I
What do you think, Margie or Mara?
I'm going to suggest that it's up to the communities to decide who their partners will be. We are not going to do multiple grant awards to the same community, but that doesn't mean that if a vendor, transportation organization is partnered with other municipalities, they would not be considered.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions here about, as a taxi company, who would be eligible for them to partner with? I think you've already spoken a little bit from the perspective of projects that have gotten funded, but maybe you could speak to several examples of taxi companies who they might want to reach out to about a project like this.
So I would imagine, I remember with the urgent program, we did have a couple of taxi companies reach out to us, and I would say that we asked them to just reach out to the regional the ones that are listed there in step 1 of the grant application, or in terms of who's eligible. It's the maybe a municipality or a city, in terms of a city or town, or it could be a local nonprofit or a health and human service provider. Or a regional transit agency. So I would say reach out to those and see if they are interested in the program.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that as well, we've had previous applicants work with specific programs who are serving specific groups, for example, like veterans programs or like councils on aging, groups like that, that need some specific transportation services. as well as some more broad partnerships like with a municipality as a whole. In the urgent program, we also had a municipality apply who had a public transit service that was not able to be used during COVID. So they replaced that service that was not able to be used with the taxi program. So there's kind of a variety of options to partner.
Hey, Mara and Travis, this is Josh here. Just to jump in on that, I think a couple of other audiences that could be explored through the new operational subsidy program here are social service providers, because I think that there might be appetite among some community-based organizations to provide transportation for constituents, as well as educational institutions, universities specifically, as long as they qualify under the nonprofit status.
Okay.
That's great. I have a technical question, guys. So there's several questions about rate tax and about tips. So if you speak a little bit more about how you should submit how to contract with the taxis and what you're looking for there in terms of reimbursement.
Sure. Travis, I can take that one if you want.
Yeah.
So during the urgent program, we had folks negotiate kind of a variety of different things related to the per trip ride cost. So I want to just say up front that that's for you to negotiate with the taxi companies or your partner company about what that rate might be. For some examples, we had some folks negotiate a flat rate per trip, which sometimes included a really small like cleaning fee, small tip, something like that. There was also a different method that people used where they had, say, 3 or 4 different types of trips going different places and different lengths. And so people said, to go into Boston was like $100 for a trip, to go, down the street was $20 for a trip. And they estimated, 20 of these trips, 30 of these types of trips, things like that. So I think it's up to you to determine what types of trips you want to do, the locations of those trips, and then estimate how many of those different trips you would take, and then to work with your partner to determine what the rates of those should be.
That's great. Thank you, Mara. Drop it in the chat if you have any other questions about rates. David asks, can the grant be awarded to a community that has an existing microtransit service in place, which is already being partially funded by another state grant? So if you could speak to how these proposals can augment or interact with other grant-funded programs.
That's a new one. So I think that's something we will have to look at, but I don't know. So I'll have to. I think you've sent that in recent or today. I'll have to look at that in terms of what we think it is. I don't know, Mara, what you think.
Yeah, we'll have to ask Margie that question and get back to you. These, just so everyone knows, just a reminder, the answers to these questions, we're keeping track of all of them. They'll be posted on our website on Friday. So if your question does not get answered today, we will work on it between now and Friday and put answers to these questions on our website on Friday.
I apologize, I was cut off. My internet has been a little shaky lately. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. Perhaps you could repeat it for me?
Yes, let me scroll up. The question was David, and he was wondering if its community has an existing microtransit service in place, which is being partially funded by another state grant. Are they eligible for these funds?
There's nothing in the grant that would prevent that. If this is going to supplement additional funds, we would want to know that, how it is funded, what the funding is, which we did in the urgent program as well. We asked if this was going to add on to an already existing service. So we would want to know that. but it wouldn't preclude you from consideration.
Thank you.
Jessica asks if this program can be used with HRIA, Health Research and Action, and VSAS. So I guess if you could speak to using state agencies as partners. In
Mark?
this case, yeah.
Mark, can you take that for a second? I'm going to pause for 1 second.
So I actually don't have an answer. We hadn't considered fully the use of state agencies to provide the service, but we'll take that under advisement and consider it and see whether that would be appropriate, and you can look for it in our response.
Deborah asks, are there allowed to be certain days that you would contract with the taxi service on? For example, we would work with this taxi service on Tuesdays and Thursdays only, or is it to be on demand?
I think whatever works best for your program and your service, I think should be fine. What days of the week I don't think makes any difference from a funding perspective.
Nor does it matter if this is on demand or not. You need to design what's best for your community and what you think you can support.
Sharon, I'm going to take a pause here. I think we have a Mary Turpey from Boston Cab would like to speak. So Mary, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify a few things. I'm sorry. I'm behind the 8 ball on this, and we're trying to catch up. If Boston Cab Dispatch is not registered, I believe it's called ComMass or something. There's a city registration program. Is that what you were referring to earlier? Is that why we haven't been approached by anybody wanting to partner yet? How do we?
So I'll take this from you. What you need to be is you need to be a corporation and have filed as a corporation with the Secretary of State's office in order to receive state funds. It's actually an incredibly easy thing to do if you haven't already.
No, we have done that. And
Okay.
I'm surprised why we haven't been approached.
Hey, Mary, this is Josh Eichen from MAPC here. Thanks for joining here, and it's good to hear your voice virtually. The reason why you probably haven't been approached at this point is that this is sort of like the beginning phase for the operational subsidy program. The other reason might be, and I don't know, maybe you can clarify this, is that many of your operators who use your dispatch service may be individually incorporated taxi operators. And so the way that this program is set up is that the grant recipient is an entity that will then contract with specific taxi operators, whether they are, a company, incorporated cab, full service cab company that has both dispatch and driver operations, or individual operators who will then be using dispatch for one thing or the other, or will be receiving rides or jobs from the contracting entity directly.
No, that's actually excellent. And I just wanted to extend that. I have a list of the towns and cities where these independent members live, and many of them are outside of the 95 belt. I've been following the chat, and it seems like people are concerned that there's no transportation in their area. And that might not necessarily be the case. There might be a provider that lives right down the street from you. And if people wanted to contact me, I'd be happy to pair them up with somebody if they lived in their area. I don't know. We're interested in participating.
Mary, just put your information in the chat.
Okay.
And so people can reach out to you directly. And I just want to reiterate that this isn't required to be a company that is necessarily in your community if you don't have these kinds of services. You can look at an adjacent one. Something to remember, obviously, is cost. The further out you go, the greater the likelihood of a greater cost. But if you can't find one in your community, you might find one in the one next to you.
Thank you, Margie. That's a really good point. We have had folks that have at times, been saying, I'm looking for a taxi company, and they've talked to their community next door, or they've, done a Google search and they found ways. So that's an excellent point. Just noticing we're having questions in terms of like when the money has to be spent by. The funds should be spent by the end of the calendar year of 2021, December 31st, 2021. And so when you do your application, put in an application that determines like when you think it might start and when you think, and then think about it ending by that time, or whenever you think it would in terms of your application. But funds must be spent by then, or they would be returned back to MAPC. So,
Travis,
yep.
Related to timeline, earlier on we had a question of an individual who didn't think that they were going to be able to apply for this round of funding, but wanted to know what were our projections for future rounds of funding.
So at this point, our projection is we would want to do 1 to 2 grant rounds per calendar year, but we're not. At this point, this is the one that we're doing right now, and I think it will be the future funding will depend upon the funds that are available in the Transportation Infrastructure Enhancement Funds. So
We'll also be learning as we go along what has been a valuable experience, what hasn't. So even if there is funding, what it'll be looking like might depend very heavily upon the success of this program and the urgent program to make sure we're really reaching out there and servicing what needs to happen.
Sharon, are there any more questions in the chat, or I want to give other people maybe who can't do the chat a chance to raise their hand?
Yeah, I think that it might make sense to go over to folks who didn't have a chance to type into the chat box. Or maybe I missed their question.
Okay, so one way to do that is you can do the hand raising method. And so I'm going to ask someone a little bit more technical at this than I am. What is the way that people can raise their hand?
I don't believe in Zoom meetings people can raise their hand, but I believe they can all unmute themselves.
Well, then okay. So at this point, maybe if you're on the phone and you need to unmute yourself, or otherwise just go ahead and state your name and who you're with and your question. Anyone else has questions?
In the meantime, Travis, do you mind speaking to if this grant can be used to supplement fees associated with using a startup tech platform to coordinate rides to be included in the 95%? And Emily, maybe you want to explain a little bit more what you mean by that question?
Yeah, Emily, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Yeah, I'm wondering very innovative ways to go about this because the need in Bridgewater here is pretty great. There's an organization called Nesterly that's just launched a tech platform for coordinating and matching volunteers, but they're going to be possibly reaching out towards livery services to try to get transportation around town. So it's not quite set up that they're a taxi or livery service, but they could be, underlined, could be potentially consulting with the taxi livery industry. So it's not like an official, taxi or livery service, but if we were to include their fees associated in the grant, if we were grant recipients, would that be applicable towards the 95%?
it's hard for me to know exactly because I'm trying to understand it as best I can, but I'm thinking, so the just make sure I understand, the technical, or the tech company would be one that could match maybe the taxi drivers or the taxi companies to the rides. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Kind of like a startup. Well, I guess maybe just thinking out loud more, it sounds like it's more of an administrative expense because it's kind of like a dispatching data collection platform.
Yeah, I would say, this is look again for all these, look for our responses by Friday in terms of that. But I think that if it's some sort of administrative operation or platform, you could use that. But again, you have to show in your budget that 95% of the funds are going to the taxi operators. So if that the cost of that tech operator or that tech company that's matching the rides is within that 5% that you could that set up, then that might be allowed in terms of a way to do the program.
Well, thanks, you guys.
I also want to add to that, as part of this fund, MassDevelopment has a separate grant opportunity to support taxi businesses. I'm getting the link right now and I'll share it in the chat. But that, and it's closed right now, but they'll probably have another round of funding maybe in the spring or sometime next year. And that is directly to support business needs of the taxi industry. So I'm gonna just find that link and I'll drop it in the chat for everyone.
There's a note that because of COVID-19, we're only allowed to have one passenger in a van at a time with a driver. I'm assuming that this is coming from the perspective of a center on aging or for health and human services trips. Do you mind just speaking towards, I know we partnered with several COAs in the last iteration of this fund, how that looked. It seems like there were several folks who were interested in that as a model.
Sure, I'm seeing this in the chat. So it says, because of COVID-19, we're only allowed to have one passenger on the van at a time with the driver, unless the rider needs assistance, they can bring their personal care assistant. These funds could really help our service to pay for cab rides for trips that do not fit into our schedule. We don't have current budget. Yeah, see, so this is, I think this is an example of what the program was set up to do. I mean, you currently have a transportation program, but you have an unmet need because of the the need to separate and only have a certain number of passengers. So that's very much what others did in the urgent program, for example. So that would be one of the things that would be eligible under this program. Yes.
Travis, do you want to get Maureen's question? I know that we got several of those by email as well. About using vehicles.
I think I can touch on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Margie.
I think it's terrific if a community has resources of its own that it can provide to this. And if it wants to work with a company who provides the driver, that's an opportunity to do so. Or the sole proprietor would have to be registered as a corporation. It can be an S corporation, which means it's a sole proprietor. I own it myself. It's my corporation. We don't make a distinction on that. They just have to be listed with the Secretary of State as a corporation. It can't be done for an individual who just can drive with a CDL.
We had this question, and so I'll answer it in terms of can we use this for Uber and Lyft? And the answer is no. TNC or transportation network companies are not eligible for this. The program is specifically set up to help taxi, livery, and hackney companies. So you cannot partner with Uber, Lyft, or other transportation network companies.
Travis, how many grants were given out last round and how many do you expect to have this time around?
Well, I can answer how many were given at the last round. That's 25. That obviously everything depends upon the number of applicants we get and the funds that are available in terms of what we're going to do in the next round. Okay, any other questions people may have in terms of you can raise the hand or unmute yourself and just talk. If someone wants to know how much fun, in the meantime, how much funds are available. It's currently 2 point, Mara, do you remember it's 2.5?
It's about 2.5 million. So it's a good chunk of funds. Although we are expecting a number of applications. So we just ask that everyone give us a detailed budget about what you're looking to use the funds for.
Are applicants that receive the urgent care grant eligible to apply again? And if so, can they use some of the same information and language?
Yes. I think we noted that in the instructions that people who are, people who got the urgent program funds are eligible for this as well.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I know we've mentioned it a couple times in this webinar so far, but please note if you were a previous applicant and grantee for the urgent program, this program is different. So if you're thinking about copying and pasting, just please make sure that you reread the new information that we have on our website about this grant program to make sure that what you are writing in your new grant is reflective and works with this new grant program, because there are differences between the two programs.
So I can address Marilyn's question, which is, my concern is if I get this program going and my funds run out, do others market that this is a temporary program? This is a temporary program with temporary funding. So I don't think anybody tries to sweep that under the rug. It would be phenomenal if this led to other opportunities for transportation in your neighborhoods. But this is not meant to be a permanent. This is a temporary opportunity.
And I think if there's opportunities that this program can start for you, that could potentially lead into a more sustainable and permanent program in some way, I think that would be amazing. Obviously, there's differences in funding and things like that, but if there's a way to make the program sustainable, we'd love to hear about that in your application. But we anticipate probably most of these programs will be temporary with these funds.
Any other questions?
We did have, oh no, sorry, that was.
So don't think this is your one shot at questions. It's important to know that additional questions can be submitted for another week, I believe, Mara. In which case, if you haven't thought of it now and it comes to you later, please feel free to reach out and send your questions. We're happy to be as informative as possible.
Yes, we're accepting questions until Thursday. So if folks have questions, please email Travis and I. I'm sure you all have my email because that was for the Zoom call today. And Travis's email is also online with all of the information. So we'd encourage you to email us your questions, and please look on Friday for the FAQ session that is online. I'm sorry, the document that is going to be online. Oh, and Travis just put his email in the chat as well, so you all should have that.
That was a good wrap up, Mara, so I don't want to derail it, but noting that we got several questions that were very specific about what can and cannot be done with that 5%. So I might suggest that that would be the type of thing that we will cover in more detail in an FAQ document. So if you didn't get your question answered today.
Sure, and in general, I think we do want to see specifics about what you would spend the admin on. That would be appreciated.
Okay, so with that, let me I need to, sorry, I need to move some things here. There we go. If there's no further questions, Sharon, any further questions at this point?
No, not that I've seen.
Okay. Well, like was said, we have the opportunity for you to submit questions through the 12th. So I'll repeat it again, to the 12th, Thursday, and then we are, and certainly don't wait, if you want to send your question, don't wait till then, because it'll be easier for us to compile this and get this out and posted on Friday on the 13th. So let me see if I can find a way to advance the slide here. So, okay, so here are the important links. So the first one left is where you will go to get the legal notice, where you can see about the grant. It includes things such as the fillable application that you download, the instructions, the grant contract. So that's one thing we haven't talked about yet, but we do ask that you download that and review it. And then if you have any questions about the grant contract, you could let us know as well. But think about that in terms of what you see in the contract. And then, as I mentioned, that's where we will post the addenda to this, such as the questions and others. There's also a memo that we put out in terms of the procurement during the current COVID-19 emergency. The Taxi Partnerships Program page, the next link that you see there with the mapc.org/taxi partnerships, that has a list that has the link to the NGO, to the notice of grant opportunity on the legal notices in case you can't find it. So that's another place to go. It also lists the current 25 partners that are under the urgent program. So if you kind of want to see who got the first round of funding and what they're doing. As I mentioned, the scoring criteria that I went over very briefly, that is listed there as an addenda number 1. So you can download that. You can look at it. You can see the criteria, the weighting, and the guidelines for how our committee will be scoring it. So I think it's important you look at that when completing your application. And as I mentioned, the frequently asked questions, or all these questions and our responses, will be posted by Friday as well. I do want to also mention that MassDevelopment, we talked about this briefly, but that MassDevelopment, who is our partner, by the way, and we really want to thank them for the work that they've helped doing to help us with this. It's a partnership between MAPC and MassDevelopment. This is a statewide grant. I want to also emphasize that as well. All these are statewide grants. MassDevelopment has what they call the Taxi and Livery Business Support Grants, which offers taxi, livery, and hackney operators financial assistance to secure products or services that will aid in improving their competitiveness and enhancing their safety capabilities in a rapidly evolving market of for-hire transportation. The link is there on the massdevelopment.com. The current round of grants has since closed, but I want to give you that link for this is for the taxi operators specifically out there if they're looking for ways to help their business and use those funds to help their business in terms of how they, with technology and other things. There will be that grant as well. Like I mentioned, it's closed now, but you could check that out to see for if other grants in the future that will be part of that program. And this, again, is the Notice of Grant Opportunity Legal Notices page. And I'm going to check the chat to see if there's, and I see that Mara has posted it as well there. So with that, I'll ask one more time if there's any questions anyone has. You can unmute yourself, ask, add it in the chat. All right. I guess with that, I want to thank everyone. I'll let Mara or Margie any last words before we go.
I would just add that MAPC is super excited about this. This has been very successful to date with the urgent program, and we are very much looking forward to your applications and see the innovative ways that you're going to be meeting the transportation and service needs of your communities. We have a lot of faith in all of you, and we believe that this funding will go a long way towards assistance. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for submitting questions early. So you had a chance to look those over, and hopefully those links that are in the chat are helpful to you to be able to find that information later. And also I have all of you that registered. I have all of your emails, so I can also share I can send an email to you on Friday with the FAQs once they're posted. If that would be helpful. And then, as I mentioned, if you have any other questions, please email Travis and I, and we'll either respond to them directly or we'll put them in the FAQs and share them with you that way. Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We really appreciate your time today. We really look forward to your applications, and let us know if you need help because we're here to assist. So have a good day, everyone, and look for my email later this week.
Bye. Thank you.